For such a long time, food specifically, within every single not-for-profit with WFP, just across the board, it was folks in politics and not-for-profit. And no one who actually worked in food, not on a base level, not people who picked up tomatoes. And I think what we realized is we need to include farmers and fishermen in the conversation. We need to include chefs in the conversation. We need to include folks who run school feeding programs that feed school children. Everyone who's involved in the food system should have a voice in this conversation because we have so much grandfather knowledge. We know how to not waste food. We know how to get everything out of this product. We know how to educate. But what is this framework? And there's someone like me. I have this incredible gift of an audience where I can speak to people online, but not everyone has that same platform. We all have a platform on some level, two or 2 million people, but not everyone has that voice or feels empowered to have that. And we wanted to empower folks, but I do know this: the only people who I know who have been successful in the creative sphere would have done that thing regardless of whether they got paid for it or not. So where I grew up in New Brunswick, it's obvious, if you ask so many people from Maine or if you ask many people from New Brunswick, they would obviously pick 15,000 differences. But, coastline, trees, everything, it's so similar. And I would say, people wise, we also operate really similarly, especially on the coast, because the part of New Brunswick that I grew up in is a coastal region, heavy in seafood, oysters, lobster, snow crab, all of that comes from where we're from, and obviously Maine prides itself on their own seafood industry as well, and not just the industry, but it's the culture of the industry, the people who work on the boats, the shipbuilders and mechanics and all that, all those other people, the producers and providers, the boxers. It's such a massive industry for both provinces. So, and aside from that, not to go on and on saying, wax about how great Maine is, but it's also obviously the closest American province to where we're from. So if ever we did a day trip or a long weekend, we almost always went to Maine.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay, then that's it. Set in stone. I have to go to Maine.
Yeah, 100%. I will say Portland, Maine is one of my favorite food cities in the US. And it's obviously it's a little underserved based on, where it is in the region. So a lot of folks don't get up that far necessarily. But there's so many restaurants that are being operated or chefs running spaces who have left Boston or Manhattan or wherever because they wanted a quieter life. They wanted to be able to have a restaurant built out at an affordable cost. So they've gone there. So the quality of output is super high. It's really good.
Wow,
that's good to know.
That's
I
really
feel
cool.
like that's a trip that we need to make.
Yeah. And food is
I
my
would
love
highly
language.
suggest it.
What was that, Dennis?
Sorry to interrupt. I said I would highly suggest it for sure.
Yeah.
If ever you get a chance, it's worth it.
Well, food is my love language. Food is my life. Like I love food so much. Like I dream about food. I mean, yesterday I stuffed up so bad. I haven't made a baked potato in the longest time, and I royally f***ed it up. I don't know how I f***ed it up, but I did. Yeah, I mean, even I was telling you, Michelle, about it. Like I did it exactly how I've always done it, and for whatever reason, I f***ed it up. I think the potato was too big, so I didn't cook it long enough.
Yeah.
And then I tried to nuke it in the freaking microwave, which I would never do because it's a freaking microwave. And then it went rock hard. It was a disaster. So I'm so embarrassed that I couldn't even manage to do a baked potato yesterday. But I love food. Dennis, teach me.
Everyone has. I'm not judging you at all. Everyone has. It's funny. Food is a sliding scale, and I remember when I started cooking. Doing something like a poached egg was almost even impossible to get right, until you get it. And then you can do it 1,000 times over. Or you can work in a hotel and do it for 1,000 people on a set. You know what I mean? It's just such a sliding scale that I feel like, I still have days like that. My days might not be a potato, and that's not a judgment. It's just to say, but it might be something else. And I think the cool thing about food, at least in my opinion, is it doesn't matter how long you work in food or at what level you work. There's always learning. There's always growth, and there's always new cuisines, ingredients to learn and discover and incorporate into your, so you can't reach the end of the internet, when it comes to food. It's just a constant journey, which I think to me is why food is so exciting, because you can literally eat for a lifetime and still discover more.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. I know. Well, that's a great kind of, I don't know, segue to getting started. But, welcome to the Wellness Podcast. We are so excited to have you. And I know I mentioned earlier that you've known Campbell for a while, and she's shared, a little bit about you with me. And I know I'm excited just to kind of learn more. I'm kind of fascinated in a way from just music and kind of going down that angle, and then kind of, I don't know if it's a pivot, if that's the right word, and you'll kind of maybe walk us through that, but into food. But I feel like there's kind of a creative element to both of those things that kind of link together. So
Mm.
I'm excited. I just thank you for being here. And if you just want to introduce yourself and just tell us who you are first, and then we have like 1,050,000 questions that we want to ask you.
For sure. Yeah, it's awesome to be here. Thank you for taking the time to chat through. Dennis Prescott, a chef. I'm from Canada. Like you said, I was not always a chef, or like you alluded to. My goal was to be a musician. It's funny, when I was a kid, I remember, I was the kid who would come home from school, and I would play guitar and practice in, my room for hours and hours and hours before bed. And that was my end game. I had no backup. I had no thing that I wanted to really do. I decided to go to university because that's what you're supposed to do. And a guy with a van said, I'm going on tour, and I'm going to go to South Carolina and Georgia and North Carolina and Kentucky. And do you want to come and play guitar? So I said, yeah, sure. So I immediately went down and did that. My parents, who are educators, did not love that choice at all. And it turned into me being a full-time musician for about 10 years. And, not with any real intentionality, definitely not at the onset, but I think just one choice led to another. And I, kind of found myself living, on someone's couch, or sleeping on someone's basement, or, sleeping with 6 other guys in a 15-passenger van, traveling all across North America. Um, and time flies by. But in the back end of that, I landed in Nashville, Tennessee. I had this opportunity to work out of a studio. We were just south of the city in Franklin, but I probably don't need to say this musician's lifestyle is rich in only experience. So I was sleeping, in an apartment with like 6 other people. I slept with the lights on every night because there was a cockroach problem, so the cockroaches wouldn't come close to you when you were sleeping. And we got all of our furniture. It's a very true story. We got all of our furniture from the Korean church. They were having down the road. They were having a yard sale, and they kind of felt bad for us because we didn't have any money. So they donated. Like blow up air mattresses, some camping chairs. So I literally, for 2 years, I blew up this air mattress every single night before bed, and I was on the floor every single morning. My back still hurts many years later. But I found this creative, it was amazing. I found this incredible creative community of people. My whole life, and I understand why, but my whole life, when people would ask, well, what do you do? I would say, I'm a guitar player. And they say, yeah, yeah, but what do you do for work? There was always a follow-up question to, yeah, but what's your job? Not, I know you like that. What's your job? But then I moved to Nashville. There was no follow-up question. It was just, what do you do? I'm a guitar player. Amazing. Where do you play? And
Yeah.
I felt free to be a creative for the very first time in my life. So I owe a lot to Nashville. It's a hard city. It's a challenging city to navigate. In the music world, there's the best musicians on planet Earth exist there. So there's a lot of competition for opportunity, but it did inspire me to kind of greatness. I think one of the things, though, because of that, sorry, long way of answering your question as to who I am, but the incredible blessing of Nashville was that it was so challenging, and I needed something to control, and I couldn't control music. I when it was good, it was good, and when it was challenging, it was really challenging, and I was eating. I'd spent 10 years eating on the road. If you travel as a musician, it's different nowadays. It's still hard, but it's different now. But at that point, the only thing open after a gig was McDonald's or whatever, right? So I was kind of forced to eat what was available on the road, and he definitely wasn't taking care of myself. And a friend had a not an intervention, but the closest thing that you can, one person intervention, and said, you need to take care of yourself. And I said, well, what does that mean? He said, well, maybe you should start kind of cooking. And I had no access to YouTube was a very brand new thing. Of course, I'm not going to go to culinary school or anything like that. So he said, you should go to the library and borrow cookbooks. And I vividly remember saying, you're crazy. The library doesn't have cookbooks. They have Tolstoy. They have Joyce, Um, and they don't. They have a whole section of cookbooks in every single library. Mine's in there. I went and I borrowed these two cookbooks, and the guy was a smiley guy on the cover. It turns out it was Jamie Oliver. I knew
Mhm.
nothing about anyone in the food industry. I just happened to pick those books, and I made this dish. I invited about 20 people over from the studio, bandmates, engineers, everyone, and we put all of these. They made a makeshift table with a bunch of tables, put together with all of the chairs, with those camping chairs with beer holders on the side.
Mhm.
And I made chicken korma dish because I remembered making chicken or eating chicken korma in England when I made a record there a few years before, and I loved it. And it's the first thing I ever cooked for anybody, and I cooked for 20 people. And um, I think the thing for me, when everybody sits down and they take their first bite and it gets quiet just for a second, and then it starts to get a little bit louder. I fell in love with that moment because, and that's when I fell in love with food. Really fell in love with it because I didn't realize that you could have a connection like I had on stage playing somebody's favorite song or some song that reminded them of being in high school or when they fell in love or whatever it is. I didn't realize that you could have a real connection with somebody at the table. And that's when I fell in love with food. And obviously, flash forward, I've been able to do all these things that I'm so, so fortunate and blessed to do. But I think for me, it's because I really just truly fell in love with feeding people. And I don't think anyone falls in love with cooking. I think you fall in love with feeding people. Food is an act of service and it's a gift. It's an act of love. I think you fall in love with that. And then it just makes you inspired to want to cook more.
Yeah. God. Wow. Wow.
Truly. And I feel like there is that, like that moment you just described when people are kind of like, they take that first bite and, do you kind of like look around to every face? Or are you kind of sitting like, like how do you live that moment? I guess the first time you probably were just not expecting it, but then it happened. But how do you live that moment?
I mean, to me, it's a funny thing. I think so many folks are nervous to cook, and I hear from so many people they're nervous to cook on, they have friends coming over on Friday night and they're nervous on Wednesday. Are they going to like it? What should I cook? The reality is food, and you kind of you alluded to this at the start of our conversation, but food and music are the two things that connect us globally, no matter where you live, what language you speak. We all celebrate food and music as culturally and globally. The reason why we love food, in my opinion, is because food is community. Food is the gathering of people at the table, and I think so many people are nervous and scared about. Obviously, we want to eat good food. Don't get me wrong, and we want it to be delicious, but that really is secondary to the connection that you have with the people that you break bread with. And I think that if we just remembered, it's actually people are so excited to see you. They want to be with you.
It's true.
Food is the vehicle in driving people together, but at the end of the day, it's because we want to spend time in each other's presence, right? So I think that, obviously, those moments where you cook something and people love it, it just inspires you to cook more. But I think having a North Star of, I just want people to be together. I think fundamentally we're better people when we spend more time at the table anyway, right? We have real conversations. We need to spend more time together at the table. And food can be a great vehicle for that. But I think, remembering that in the act of cooking is great because it kind of takes some of the stress out of it and it can make food fun.
I totally agree. For me, I'm really grateful that Drew is very adamant that we all sit at the table and we eat together and the phones are away. And this was something that my father also instilled in us. When you came to the table, when you were coming together, as a community and we were discussing people's days. And it really was that, as you described, that joy of you're going to eat together, but just to be with those people in that community. It's just such a beautiful feeling. And you're so right about the music and the food side of things. It just blows my mind. Drew had some food that I made him the other day, and he wasn't crying, but he got emotional because it reminded him of when he was younger. And I think we discussed this, Dennis, before, like how food and music will bring back those memories. And it was just, it's so profound that you just said what you said, because it is about community, it is about getting people back together. It's about putting good food in our bodies and really just loving and nurturing not just ourselves but our family. And I think that we've been so far removed from that since COVID or whatever you want to call it, but I think the separation has been just so huge and so divided. I think this is why I desperately wanted you to be involved and come on and share who you are, Dennis, because I think it's really important that it's not just about making food and cooking for people and you know, people walking away and being happy. It's the community aspect, the love, the joy of being with family. I think is just so key that you said that.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think, it's interesting. I had this incredible opportunity to be part of a group that put together the Chef's Manifesto for the World Food Program, for the United Nations on behalf of their Sustainable Development Goal Action Hub 2030 goals, a few years ago. And part of that, and then part of the work that I do with World Vision Canada, is I spend a lot of time in East Africa, some Southeast Asia as well, but a lot of time in East Africa. And, on the back of that, have literally traveled all over the world. And I will ask people literally everywhere I go, especially kids, because it's a great open question. If you could eat anything, what's your favorite thing to eat? Right? No one says a dish at a restaurant. No one.
No.
Everyone says something their mom cooked for them, or their grandma, or
Yeah.
their guardian, whoever it is. Everyone says something like that because food is memory, food is nostalgia, and I think that the best chefs in the world understand that and tap into that, and they remind you of something at the table that's it's visceral. It feels like you're being brought back to something,
Yeah.
and I think that, without getting into the weeds on it, honestly, I think sometimes the food that we don't connect to as much is ego driven food, because it's about somebody trying to make their own food. But when you think about the diner, when you think about the person at the table, when you put yourself in their shoes, you really get a sense of, well, what do they want to eat? Well, they want to eat something they love.
Yeah.
What are they going to love? They're going to love that food that comforts them, that reminds them of being 12. For me, I always say my mom's pizza to me is the best pizza in the world. I've had the great fortune to eat pizza, in great pizza, regions all over Italy, New York, Chicago, wherever. My mom's pizza's still the best pizza. The truth is, it came out of a craft box with burnt hamburger, and pre-shredded cheese, and nothing was good. But it reminds me of being 10 and coming home from baseball practice with my brother and eating my mom's pizza. And to me, like, you can't change that. Memory is still there. Have I had better pizza? Of course, but I will never love that pizza like I love my mom's pizza.
No.
And I think, to me, there's something about food, with that memory aspect. Anyway, not to go on, but I think it's really important. And I think that, if anybody's listening and is wanting to get inspired, to spend more time in the kitchen, cook food that you love, cook food that you grew up eating, and cook food for people, knowing that they're going to also love it, because that it's going to be a great experience at the table. I tell people all the time, if you're going to start cooking, cook those dishes that you can't not order on a menu because you love it so much, or those dishes that remind you of being a kid, because you already know what they're supposed to taste like. It's going to be fun. Food should be fun. It shouldn't be stressful. It should only be fun. And I think those memories, and the connection at the table is just going to want to make you cook more and spend more time around food.
I find so much truth in your words as I think about what my favorite meal was that my mom cooked. It's Spanish rice. There is nothing Spanish about it. It is maybe instant rice, maybe it's not, tomato soup out of a can, which, I mean, these are not things that I buy, but, but still, if I think about that and, just ground beef and all put together, maybe some tomato paste to kind of thicken it up a little bit. But to me, I love that meal, and I love to cook that meal at my home for my family because it reminds me of my mom. There's, my husband's adding sriracha, like all this stuff, we do our own version of it now. But to me, it's plain, it's bland, it's delicious, it's my favorite because that was what I remember my mom making for my sisters and me and my dad, and just thinking about that and just like bringing back to that moment of that was our family, that was our thing. And it's not the most delicious dish I've ever had, but it's still my favorite.
Yeah. 100%.
Well, it's
Yeah,
the
that's
joy
amazing.
element there too, isn't it? It's the joy, it's the happiness, it's the memory, it's the connection.
Mhm.
I'm so glad that we have spoken about your music past, and the food element to it, because I hadn't even really thought about that until just when Michelle had mentioned it and you did. I mean, obviously I knew that you were a musician before, but the two things that I love the most in this world is music. It's frequency, it's the sound going through my body, and food that nourishes me. Like, I get so much freaking joy from food and good music that's really the two things that I need in life to be happy, and then when you can gift that to someone else in your family group or your friendship group, and bring them joy through music and food, then I think you've done your job as a human. Like, so Dennis,
Yeah.
you need to get better at cooking baked potatoes, because I was really good at baked potatoes, and then yesterday's was a disaster.
Mm. Well, next time you're making baked potatoes, if you run into any challenges, you know who to call.
I mean, I was so mad at myself because, like an asshole, I've gone, these are going to be the best baked potatoes you've ever had in your whole entire life. And you could have killed someone with one, because it was so, Michelle, it's supposed to be my best friend, stop laughing. It was so hard. You could have actually killed someone with it as a weapon. Drew ate the other one because it's Drew and he loves me. But I mean,
They're like, no, we're not
Oh
eating
my God,
that.
it's fine.
it was awful. And then I said to Drew, I was like, oh my God, this is awful, because I'm going to be speaking to Dennis tomorrow. You and I are going to do something together, like cooking show, book, blah, blah, blah. And I failed miserably with a big potato. Like, what is going on?
I think we have our concept.
Maybe the book should be called Baked Potatoes.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's crazy. Anyway, I'm just so happy that we got to do this, you guys. Like, just having you all here is awesome. Carry on.
Mhm.
I'm just going to listen.
I'm curious, how did you start to share? So you cooked your first meal for 20 people, which was a very adventurous choice, by the way, to cook for 20 people.
That's bold.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm nothing if not bold, to be honest with you. To a fault, probably. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because I really had no dreams of being in food at all. When I say I wanted something to control, I really meant it.
Mhm.
For me, it was something where I could, there was, anytime that you cook, it goes without saying probably, but I had not really thought about this at the time. There's a cause and a reaction, right? You cook something and then you eat something. Whereas in music, it was, am I working today? Am I not working today? Am I going to get it right? There's never any certainty around it. Whereas food, there was certainty, right? And it's such a small certainty, of course. I'm going to make a sandwich, I'm going to eat it. But at least it was something I felt like I could control. The other thing is I needed to lose weight, truthfully, because I just wasn't taking care of myself. And the byproduct of me starting to cook is I lost about 80 pounds in a year. I was cooking whole food. I was cooking from scratch. I wasn't eating. My rule was I won't eat anything. And this lasted for literally 15 years. I won't eat anything from a restaurant that has a drive-through window, ever. And it was a small shift in my life, but I had spent so many years, in that van getting fast food at night. And I just said, I can't do it anymore. So for a very long time, I did that. I lost a ton of weight, and obviously I learned how to cook. Um, that then kind of flash forward, I worked in every kind of almost every job within the food industry. I ran a catering company and worked in the Hamptons for a while, ran a coffee and donut spot with my brother. Did everything, wash dishes, like did the whole nine yards. And then I, at the same time, actually the exact same friend who suggested that I go to the library said, hey, there's this app called Instagram. Have you ever heard of it? I mean, I was just a person who, I was just cooking and doing my thing and working 15 jobs at the same time. And so I downloaded this app and I just started sharing the only thing that was on my phone, which were photos of food. And with no end game. I just thought, this is cool. interestingly enough, and I still will only always speak positively about social media, and there's certainly negative aspects of social media, but I do think there are positive ones, and especially at the time when I started on Instagram, which would have been early days, it was really just a community of people that wanted to connect on like-minded things, right? So I found these people who loved food just as much as me, but they lived in Thailand or Kenya or England or maybe my own
Yeah.
town, and we just all shared this love of food, which that didn't exist before. An online community that I could connect to someone, not in that way, where we could connect around this one very hyper specific thing, just didn't exist. So, to me, not just to connect to food at the table and the community of food at the table, but the global community of food through Instagram, I fell in love with. And I just started sharing kind of what I had cooked for the day, wherever that was. Early days, it might have been Saturday at the market, with our donut shop, or it could have been whatever. And that started to kind of slightly grow, slowly by slowly. And then I had a reach out from somebody at Food and Wine Magazine that said, "Hey, we'd love you to write a column if you're interested. Would you write 10 recipes for us? But you also need to take the photographs." And at that point, I was only photographing things on my phone, and it was an old phone, obviously at the time, so it wasn't a great quality. So I went out and I bought a camera and thought, I got to figure out how to use this, and wrote this column, and then it lasted for quite a while. But that was kind of the first thing that I did, where I thought, oh, maybe I could actually, maybe this is more than than
So
than the traditional. And then, I guess one thing leads to another, and I would say that that was the first thing that helped me lead to any kind of foot in the door when it comes to media, or an alternate way of making a little bit of extra um income centered around food in a non-traditional, non-brick and mortar restaurant kind of a way. And then that led to a cookbook deal, which blew my mind. And then I only worked in food, and then so I've only worked in food ever since, in this way. And yeah, and I've been able to do a ton of things. But yeah, that's kind of was that kind of what transitioned from that early meal cooking for those 20 people. I mean, literally, I cooked in any way possible until that cookbook deal happened. When the cookbook deal happened, that's when I kind of, 2 feet in the deep end of the pool, we're going for this.
that's so incredible. This is why I feel like this was so serendipitous as well for Dennis and I, because once again, it was because of Drew. We're in the bar in Soho House, and he walks by, and Drew's like, wait. And then they started talking.
That's a crazy story. Like, how
Yeah,
fun
right.
is that?
I mean, Drew
Yeah.
is literally going to have to, he's going to own royalties at this point. But yeah, and because of that, and I met Dennis, and I've always loved food. I've always wanted to have a restaurant. I wanted to have Teddy's Kitchen, Teddy's Diner, Teddy's Tea Room. I mean, Dennis knows I've got like a menu that I've been writing since I was 8 years old, and I still have it on my phone. And I still have it like on paper. And I never thought that it would ever be possible, or it could be possible. I wouldn't know how to do it. And I'm surrounded by chefs, like I really am. And for Dennis to walk into my life the way he did in that moment it's just so profound, because I don't want to ever say I'm a chef or that I'm a great cook or any of those things, but I do get joy from it, especially when I see people happy, and the community element, as we spoke of. But my thought on what my roundabout way of saying this was, your love for music was huge, but when you discovered that you were good at what you're doing, cooking and feeding people, that joy that was coming, did you just realize, wow, this is my second evolution as a human? This is what I'm supposed to do now.
I think so, yeah. But I don't think initially that I fully had that thought formed, if that makes sense. To a fault, I will, and I say to a fault, I think it's probably a good quality at this point, now that I can kind of have the benefit of 2020. I will jump into something fully with reckless abandon, and I have no fear jumping off the ledge. That's not always worked out well for me, to be completely honest with you. But I think that a lot of people, when I left music, I thought two things. Whatever I do next has to be creative, because it's not in me. There's nothing wrong with working kind of a traditional job. Obviously, there's days where I wish that I could do that. It seems a little freeing. to be an accountant or to be a teacher or to be something like this. I think those are amazing jobs. For me, I've never felt comfortable in my skin when I wasn't able to just create all the time. And I know that might come across sounding slightly heady or pretentious. I don't mean it like that. It's just I just never fully felt comfortable doing that. And so for me, I thought I'm going to do something creative. The other thing that I decided was I'm never going to say no to anything based on fear anymore. I think when I was in music, I said no to some opportunities because I didn't think I was ready for it. I didn't think that I was set up for it. I didn't think that I had the skill set or the people around me or whatever it is. And I said, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to say yes to things because if someone else offers me this, right? And that's the thing I think often we think, I'm not ready for this. Well, the other people offering this to you think you're ready for it. So why don't you? And I think that imposter syndrome has a
Yes.
horrible way of sneaking into our creative mind. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. So to me, when I went into food, I obviously had no idea I would be where I am today. But I did know wherever I was going to go, I was going to lean in fully.
Michelle talks to me about imposter syndrome all the
All
time.
the time.
She's like, you need to stop that.
Yeah, it does. It finds its way in. And Dennis, I have spent the last 20 years in corporate America. So what you just said to me is so profound in so many ways because I feel like in a lot of ways I'm like you, and I know like I am a creative person. I want to explore that creativity, but kind of like you said earlier, where you were expected to go to university and it's just what you were supposed to do, I did the same. And that I think was the right move for me. But then I went into kind of corporate America and then like even more stringent into human resources and HR. And I did fine. I thrived in it, made it to executive level, all of that wonderful stuff. But I left it intentionally because I wanted more. I wanted different. And so I have my own business now, and I'm able to say yes when this podcast opportunity came available and all of that stuff. And I am learning to have that reckless abandon and to say yes to things and to stifle my fear and all of those things. And I find one thing, or at least what's kind of running through my head with you, is that you're also intrinsically motivated. So I feel like that's something else. So like people can hear this and listen to this, but if they're not intrinsically motivated to do it, to drive, to keep going, they're not going to make it. How did you find that? How do you have that fire in the belly to like drive you forward every day?
Yeah, I mean that's 100%. There is no one. I mean now there is a little bit more as you kind of build out your business. But initially, I mean it was all on me. Everything. If I decided not to work that day, fine, but nothing got done. So you have to find that. I think the biggest thing that I find with a lot of folks. Um, Especially younger folks, is that they'll say, I want to work in content creation or I want to work in the media space or whatever, which is amazing if you want to do that. And I'll say, well, what do you want to do? And they'll say, I'll do anything. It's always the response. I said, well, it's so hard for me not to immediately say, well, it's not going to work out. And I don't mean that in a way that I obviously I can't tell the future, but I do know this: the only people who I know who have been successful in the creative sphere would have done that thing regardless of whether they got paid for it or not. They're not looking to get paid; they're looking to make. They have to make. It's this thing in you. I have to do this, And if I can turn this into an income, awesome. But I'm doing this anyway. I was gonna cook regardless. It didn't matter. I just turned it into this. But I wanted to feed people and I wanted to cook. And I had no dreams of grandeur, thinking, it's not a moonshot. It's a Pluto shot, dream to think I'm going to have a show on Netflix or whatever. That's not normal, right? And so I never thought that was what was going to happen. I just wanted to feed people. I think there's other people who just want to paint, who just want to write, who just want to act, who just whatever it is. I think you have to love that thing so much that you're going to do it anyway, and people will see that. That's infectious. That passion is infectious, and people gravitate towards that. Yeah, so to me, I feel like if you don't have that, from the onset, it's probably not going to be successful. But if you do have that, first of all, even if you never make any money, you're not gonna regret doing that thing because you love it so much anyway. I think it's if you go down a road thinking XYZ person has been successful in this space, so I'm going to carbon copy and do that. you might regret that if you don't love it, because you'll have spent so much time trying to build out a business that you didn't really love anyway, and that may or may not be successful, if that makes sense.
100%. I think, I mean, you've got to have the integrity behind your action. I procrastinated about this for so long, and if it wasn't for Michelle, who literally said, okay, let's hold hands together and we'll jump together and let's do it, you know, it was that literally that happened, which started this whole thing. But I think we both have such a huge love for just life and just for people to be the happiest and the best version of themselves that they can be. And I feel that people have struggled for so long in this world, you know, pre 2020. But what happened in 2020 was it magnified everything to everyone, what may be right or wrong in their lives. And it doesn't matter whether someone thinks it's right or wrong. It's your story. It's your reality. Everyone can change their reality, but we're innately lazy as humans. Everyone wants insta this, insta that, blah, blah, blah. People's focus is so heavily on paper, money, finance, which we've had this discussion multiple times, Dennis, but the obsession with that piece of paper is what's causing this whole anxiety driven life where people are like, oh my God, I don't know what to do next. Like, I should do this, I should do that. Whereas if they did do just what you have done, which is do what you love because it inspires you, it gives you integrity, it gives you joy, you know, you like what you're doing as well, then you will become your brand, and that nobody can take away from you. And that's what what Michelle and I are creating here as well, was to just remind people that you have to come back to you. No one's coming to save you. That's why we called it the well nest. You're coming back to the home, to the nest. You come back to yourself. And that is food, nutrition, exercise, diet, who you surround yourself with, who you inspire, who your mentors are. Like, it's you've basically said it all in how you just delivered it. And Dennis, I feel so honored and grateful that you're in my life, because I'm going to be a better cook, and C, I'm going to be able to eat that food and just to create the mental wellness element of the food. Because as we've discussed multiple times, and this is why me and Michelle did what we did, was the food in this country is killing people, and the supermarkets are just, I mean, it's so soul destroying. I end up in tears most of the time when I'm in the supermarket, because I can see why people are so confused, because it's got all these health food section, or this is, you know, blah, blah, low sugar or whatever it is. And it's all hidden in the ingredients. I will, as we discussed the other day, if I'm going to buy fish, I want it to be from where you're from, or Alaskan fish, because the bear is eating it. You know what I mean? It might be more expensive. I want him to have the, you know, the buffalo mince that I cooked the other day, which he was just like, what is this? This is incredible. If they're going to have that type of food, it has to be the best quality food. And I know that you are sourcing in such a profound and beautiful way. And I want you to share with Michelle, because it's just so fascinating at what lengths he's gone to get these incredible ingredients, if you would indulge us.
For sure. I mean, I will say, you know, firstly, the part of the country that I'm from, obviously we have, you know, winter months are long. It snowed today, literally. So, you know, our winter is long, our summer is short, our summer growing season is short. You know, importing foods is a real thing for a lot of countries. So, you know, you know, in the one hand, in the back of my mind, and not to get too far into the weeds, you know, this idea of eating within 100 kilometers or 100 miles of your house, and eating everything locally, sustainably, and you know, that there's transparency of sourcing, I think is an amazing goal. I don't know if it's always manageable or realistic, but I do think we can move towards a food system that where we're making small conscious choices of thinking, where does my food come from? And the biggest thing that I will tell so many folks, you know, we hear the word sustainability, and I think, you know, societally, it just means nothing to us anymore, to be completely honest. I think we just go, what even is? I think the average person, and honestly, even the average person working within the not-for-profit world, it's like, well, what is sustainability anymore? What do we even mean by saying that? And you know, for me, on a base level, I just always kind of viewed it as, look, Strawberries picked in July taste unbelievable. They're so good. They're so sweet. They're so perfect. You need to do nothing to them. Truthfully, if somebody does something to them, I'm kind of angry, honestly. Like I want them just like this. Maybe a little like whipped cream or something on the side, but that's it. Strawberries in January taste like water. They're terrible. Why are we allowing ourselves to eat something that doesn't taste good? Just on a base level. And I think if we really thought that way on it, just to start, if we thought we're gonna eat what's best when it's at its best, we are eating more sustainably because we're eating with the seasons. We are eating sourcing more locally because those strawberries come from 12 kilometers to 10 miles, whatever it is, from our house, rather than being grown in a hothouse in Mexico or California or wherever it is, and they're sucking diesel fumes all the way to Maine. It just to me, I think the reality is though there's an education component around that. I think a lot of folks don't really think about where their food's coming from fully. I think that's changing. Certainly, where people have access to information, it is a different world than it was when I was growing up. Obviously, um, but I think deliciousness is key, and I think the reality is there's so many folks who you can say this is healthy for you, this is better for you, this is better for the planet, and if it doesn't taste great, they're not going to change their buying habits. We need to start with taste and flavor. Once we start with taste and flavor, then we can have a real conversation. I think for me, a lot of the I've been grateful to not just with the World Food Program work that I do, but also partnering with the province of New Brunswick where I live. I act on their ambassador for all of the aquaculture and agriculture products. So I spend a ton of time on farms and on boats with farmers and fishermen. And I'll say it like this: the best chefs in the world understand one thing. They understand how to cook from memory and tap into memory. And they also understand that a great chef's job is just to not mess up what a farmer already did. They do all the work, all of it,
Oh,
right? And I think that chefs, for some reason, have had, and I'm grateful for this. We've had a spotlight on us in the last 20 years, folks in the hospitality industry. The reality is, and it's in no way to negate the expertise and genius of so many chefs, obviously. But the reality is, we're not out in the field. For the most part, there's exceptions. We're not out in the field picking those carrots. We're not free diving to grab scallops from the ocean, right? Somebody else is doing that work. We're just having to cook it and make sure that it tastes good. So I think reshaping. We need to really reshape the global kind of conversation around our global food system. Educate people about, okay, yeah, fair enough, people cook this food, but let's think about where it comes from, not just where it comes from, but who sources it, putting names and faces on it, right? The fisherman friend, Renee, who I went out snow crab fishing, I will always think about snow crab differently because I know Renee goes out for multiple days on end in the North Atlantic, regardless of the weather, and pulls in these snow crab. It's a very hard job. There's a name to that product for me now. It's not just what I eat. There's human beings behind it. And I think
oh,
once we think that way, it changes the narrative in our own mind. I think the other thing is it allows you to really celebrate the ingredients. Sorry, not to go on, but it allows you to celebrate the ingredients. So for me, if I know where that comes from and what went into it, I'm not going to waste that because I know what the labor was to provide that. And I think reality is we grow and source so much more food than we need to feed the world, but there are so many folks who go to bed hungry every night, and that's a hard conversation to have. And I wish I had a solution to that. I don't. Um, I wish I did. And I'm grateful to work alongside folks who are working to solve that. But I
yeah.
do think that if we really just on a base level in our own homes, if we really think about this food as being precious and something that we have access to, and it's a beautiful thing, and there's humans that help to provide this for us and put it on the table, we won't waste. We'll celebrate it. We'll cook it better. We'll think about sourcing. So when we think about sourcing, yeah, maybe that fish from Alaska does cost a little bit more. So we eat less fish, but we eat fish at the highest quality possible. So then we're celebrating deliciousness, but we're also thinking about it from a buying choice. And the reality is it costs so much less to eat at home, great ingredients, than it does at the restaurant 6 days a week. And I love restaurants, but I also love when people can cook because I think when you start cooking, you really think about what you're cooking. You start to reach, I say all the time, once you start cooking, the first time that you go to the farmer's market and get tomatoes and you eat those, you're not going anywhere else. because they
Or
taste
your
so much better,
backyard.
right? Or your backyard,
Yeah.
best case scenario. So anyway, I could talk about it forever, but I really do think that we really need to give a think about where your food's coming from and buy what's best when it's at its best. And I really feel like we will, in our own small way, help to change the global food system.
You're onto something. Honestly, when you talk about education and you talk about, what's seasonal, I live in Colorado, so I'm not getting avocados or bananas in any season, right? So we probably still have to import those into our state, fine. But what is available here and what's available in July, what's available in January? I don't know. I mean, I have a CSA, a community shared agriculture. So we can get some of those products, but it's just a small little bundle that we pick up once in a while. Farmers market, fine, but I eat well. I eat healthy, but I have no idea what's seasonal in my area is. Okay, squash in the fall. Cool, got that. But I don't know. So how do you educate? How do you share that? How do you bring the message to people who live in Alabama or British Columbia or wherever
Yeah.
across, the North America to educate that? I feel like you're onto something that people will resonate with.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to, in my opinion, thank you. I feel like in my, two things, in my opinion, it's easy to understand because anyone can understand. I want to eat the best food when it's at its best. That's simple to understand. And I think we all would prefer that. Everyone wants delicious food, obviously, and we're going to spend our hard-earned money on it. I want it to taste the best that it can. Um, the other thing is I think that there's, obviously I can only speak to where I'm from or what I know. So even speaking and cooking seasonally is it's very regional for me, right? Because growing up the east coast of Canada, spending time for the most part, on the eastern seaboard, up and down the coast, I know what's available and what's in season. But I don't know what's available in Colorado either because I'm not in Colorado. So I think a huge part of that is inspiring other folks that they can help to tell these stories as well. People who are in my space to help to change, give them kind of speak to truth to power in what's available in their own backyards. And that's part of why the Chef's Manifesto for the WOFU program was created. There's multiple reasons, but a huge part of it was just creating a global network. For such a long time, food specifically, within every single not-for-profit with WFP, just across the board, it was folks in politics and not-for-profit. And no one who actually worked in food, not on a base level, not people who picked up tomatoes. And I think what we realized is we need to include farmers and fishermen in the conversation. We need to include chefs in the conversation. We need to include folks who run school feeding programs that feed school children. Everyone who's involved in the food system should have a voice in this conversation because we have so much grandfather knowledge. We know how to not waste food. We know how to get everything out of this product. We know how to, educate. But what is this framework? And, there's someone like me, I have this incredible gift of an audience where I could speak to people online, but not everyone has that same platform. We all have a platform on some level, two or 2 million people, but not everyone has that voice or feels empowered to have that. And we wanted to empower folks, so if you have a restaurant as an example that you want to create that's fully sustainable and, in Lima, Peru, and we know someone in London, England that's doing that, we can connect you. But also we can give you these tools to speak in your own area regionally that can help to empower people in Colorado or in Mexico City or in Nairobi, Kenya, wherever it is. And it's been amazing to watch people get really fired up around using their voice in their own space.
Wow.
Incredible. Awesome.
So I could talk to you for hours. It's just so interesting to me. I mean, what can we do? What can our viewers and our audience do? Like little things little tips that they could use. Because the one thing that people always say to me and complain about is it's too expensive. It's too expensive to eat organic. It's too expensive. And I'm like, okay, look where I am right now. I'm living with a condition that has been brought on by toxic products, EMF. I'm so sorry that this fire truck is
Just keep
deciding
going.
to come down my street. Anyhow, I'm living with a condition that has basically been brought on by.
It's just right there. It's like coming to your apartment.
Do you need to evacuate?
I don't live
What is Drew doing
anymore because it's just too much. But yeah, I'm living with a condition now that has been they believe has been brought on by radiation, has been brought on by spraying chemicals, growing up with farm available food ingredients in the garden, picking strawberries when they were in season. And the very thing that I love the most almost killed me. And I do try and say that to people. Well, if you think it's expensive now, wait till you get sick. But there's still that element of people going, yeah, but that's not going to happen to me, or it won't happen to me. Or, there's conditions that are all being linked to the food industry, hugely factual. This is not a conspiracy. It's not, me being Teddy, hippy dippy, whatever you want to call me. It's facts. And I'm sitting with people and I'm meeting with people that are showing me the scientific facts that children's ADHD is through the roof, autism is through the roof, chemicals are through the roof, and everything is linked back to food and big pharma at this point. How do I still love people anyway and encourage anyway without, I just plant seeds, as we've discussed multiple times. I like to plant seeds, I step back, but how do you still try and inform people with love and kindness? Because it to me, it's like watching a car crash about to happen, and it's soul destroying. Because we've been programmed,
Yeah, it's hard. Food is the one guarantee that we do every day, right? It's and I can have a terrible day and I can have an amazing day. And I'm grateful that I have more amazing days than terrible days, but it doesn't matter. I can still decide what I eat for lunch. And I can control that. And I can celebrate that, if only for 10 minutes. I can celebrate that. If I have a great day, I can also celebrate with food. It's that one constant in our lives that we often take for granted because we don't think about where our food is coming from, what we're putting in our bodies. Is it healthy? Is it not? Is there something in here I shouldn't be eating? And a lot of it, I'm certainly, I'm a guy who is a storyteller, who's a chef, who's become more of a storyteller, who works in the space that I do. I would never pretend to be an expert in this space, but I do know that there's folks who are paid for us not to know information based around what's in our food. And, and that's a massive industry. I do think that, for me in my space and my goal, what I try to do is get people to spend more time at the table. To circle back to what we said a while ago, I just think fundamentally we're better when we spend time at the table. When you spend time cooking, I firmly believe, because I've seen it happen thousands of times, the first time you cook something for somebody, for your kids, for whoever, and they love it, all you want to do is cook. And when you want to cook, the natural byproduct of you cooking more is that you have to think about where your ingredients are coming from. You just have to. If you cook those same 4 recipes that your mom taught you, that you ate when you were a kid, and you never move beyond that, you're probably not thinking about food, and what you're actually buying. But once you get into the act of cooking, you will think about your ingredients. And for me, I think what I've always suggested is for folks to go to the farmers market and talk to farmers. Just talk to them. I firmly believe that farmers probably know just as much as most cooks how to cook that food. They literally spend their entire lives growing it. And they will educate you with love, because for them it's all about, they loved that vegetable to the point where it was grown and now they're selling it. They're excited to talk to you about it. They know why it's good for you, and they have no problem telling you how they chose to grow it in a different way. I think that I've not seen anyone change their opinion based on anything but kindness and joy and loving someone, like you said, towards that. I don't think anger changes opinions, but I do think living your life in a way where it inspires other people, and also loving people towards change can be a real thing. I think for me in my own space, I'm just trying to show people that the food system is big. I'll tell you a quick story. I had this opportunity. Now I've been back to visit her several times, but there's a friend of mine. She lives in the north of Kenya. Her name's Joyce, and she lives in Iten. So Iten is where you fly into Nairobi, you take another flight, and then a commuter. And she lives in Iten is where all the Olympic athletes run. So you'll be driving down a dirt road, most beautiful country ever, but a dirt road, and then you'll see all of these runners in Nike gear running past you or whatever, because you're at elevation. So it's the craziest combination. But I went to Joyce's house the first time there with a project, and we were just going to cook together and learn what she makes for her kids. She lives in the most beautiful part of Kenya, in my opinion, or certainly one of them, where they look out, or her house looks out over the Great Rift Valley. And so it's lush, it's beautiful. They don't have access to much, but where she lives is absolutely beautiful. And she obviously, when we came in, it's myself and a film crew and everyone else. I would feel nervous if somebody came over to film me make breakfast for my family. It's not a normal thing, so clearly she was a little bit nervous. She speaks a little bit of English, but not much. But we just started cooking together, and I remember this moment that we just started chopping an onion together. It was like that whole invisible wall of division went away because food is love and it's connection. We were joking for hours. She spoke in Swahili. I obviously spoke in English. I don't know. I didn't understand a word she said, and she didn't understand anything I said. And we had the best day together. And then we ate with her kids. The thing for me that I realized at that point, to circle back, is that food is community. That's what I recognized, that we all love food. We all love sharing our favorite food with other people. We're proud of our favorite food. Um, Joyce also has this incredible story where now she saved up. She was the first woman in her family to graduate from high school, and she also then she bought she knew she wanted to have television because she thought it would be a great education tool for her kids, and that she learned how to cook through the Food Network, which is an amazing.
Oh,
It's just an
wow.
incredible story of an incredible
Yeah.
human. But I'm just saying that to say, for me in my space, I love what I do. I love it across the board. I've had these amazing opportunities to do things that I don't take for granted, and I think with that comes a certain amount of responsibility, and not necessarily in a heavy way, but really I do feel the weight of I have this voice in this platform, and how do I use it well? So to me, I want to advocate on behalf of folks on a base level. No one should go to bed hungry every night. Everyone should have access to food. I think we can all agree on that, regardless of our politics or where we're from, that everyone should eat good food. Kids should have access to full bellies when they go to bed. And I think, beyond that, we just really need to reshape how we view food, what the food narrative is. I don't want to buy my food wrapped in cellophane and plastic. I want to buy it from a farmer. How do we get back to that? All I can do is inspire folks that this is how I'm cooking and how I'm eating, and tell those stories that have empowered and changed me, and hopefully that will permeate or through osmosis or whatever will change other people's buying habits. And I'm a firm believer, maybe it's because I'm a Canadian or I'm positive to a fault, but that there will be a trickle down effect where if I help somebody else fall in love with food, hopefully they'll help somebody else, and then it's 10 people, and then it's 1,000 people, and then it helps to change in my small way the global food system.
Chills. Like, that
I
was
know,
awesome.
I'm so excited, Dennis. I'm so excited for people to know who you are and for us to do the things that we're going to do, and just for you to have met Michelle, and just the way in which this has all happened is to me it's so serendipitous. I think it was a mission. I love God. Michelle is the same as well, and not in a crazy way or anything like that, but just I believe that we've all been brought together to complete a mission, and that is to create a healthy world again, through food, through community, by lifting people up and giving people a platform and a space to share their stories and why they did what they did and why they do what they do. And to me, it's just so beautiful and magical. And I'm so grateful. I really am so, so grateful. And I cannot wait to learn more from you and do more with you. And I think, Michelle, I would love if we could get Dennis back on again at some point when we're a little bit
Without a
more down the
doubt.
track. Maybe we could cook something together or something.
Yeah.
No, but do you have anything coming out right now, Dennis? Like a new book or any kind of stuff that we need to know about?
Yeah, so I had a book come out recently, not that long ago. It's called Cook with Confidence. The whole North Star. I half touched on it before, just because I really believe in it. That food should be fun, accessible, exciting, beautiful, but also delicious. And I think that people are nervous centered around food. So obviously, there's lots of stories. Really of kind of life changing moments that I've experienced around food. Whether it was on television shows that I've worked on, or people like Joyce that have affected my life in a positive way. But really, I wanted to just break down, food, whether it's, cooking and opening oysters or, deboning a salmon or something like that for folks. But, more than that, it's how do you make vegetables taste delicious? How do you take the humble carrot and celebrate it? How do you do this without any fear and with it being fun in the kitchen? So that book is available now. And then I have some other projects that we're working on. Always a million irons in the fire.
Uh,
But yeah, likewise, to me, I love food. I love talking about food. I love sharing food. And I just feel like we're better people when we love food with each other. So I'm grateful to have, chatted through today. But yeah, we'd come back anytime.
that's awesome. Thank you. And I feel like, yeah, your reach, like you mentioned, if you could inspire one person, you've got Jamie Oliver's cookbook, he inspired you. You're now on TV, you've got your Instagram channel and all of those things, and you're influencing that. You've got Joyce, who has been influenced by you, and you've been influenced by her. I'll just share a really quick story about influence with that. So, when my daughter was 4 years old, she came to me and she said, Mom, I want to do a cooking show. And I was like, oh, that's cute. Like, cool. Like, that's so fun. Because she, instead of watching cartoons, she loved to watch the cooking show to the Food Network. Giada De Laurentiis was her go to little Italian girl, or a quarter Italian, if we're being honest, but she's got a fully Italian name. But she just was like, I want to do it now. And I was like, okay, sure, we'll do a cooking show. And she's like, no, you have a phone and we have a kitchen. And sure enough, we did 4 years of once a month episodes of a cooking show because she was inspired by food. And, it's just crazy. She was 4 years old and was like, I want to do this. We're going to make it happen. So that intrinsic motivation, like I see through her, how that's reached her. You're doing that now across thousands to millions of people. Food is a connector, and you are a perfect example of that.
Yeah, food is the big, like, I mean, we talked about it, but food and music are the two things I think everybody loves, everybody connects to. And I've always said, if we're gonna, if we're fortunate enough to eat 3 meals a day, let's make them as delicious as possible. And let's celebrate that food with people that we love, I think there's so much value in that, and I think that it's easy to forget. We live super busy lives. Finding the time is not, in myself included, it's not always as easy as just I'm making it sound to sit down at the table for a couple hours. But I think if you ask anyone what their favorite meal of the year is, they're not going to say, oh, I ate at X restaurant. They're going to say it was Thanksgiving or the holidays or Easter or, the 4th of July or whatever it is. They're always going to say this moment where it was a massive table full of people eating together, because those are the things that we love. And to me, if we can do that a little bit more often, I think we'll fall in love with not just food, but sharing food with people. I think there's so much value in it. I could talk about it until next Tuesday, but I won't do it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Like we said, we were super excited to talk to you. And I feel like to what Teddy had said, we have 100 more questions and, further episodes. It would be great to cook together, actually. I would love that if we can figure out a way to make that happen. But just thank you. This has been great. And
thank you so
one
much,
last question. Do you still play guitar?
Not as often as I should, unfortunately. Yeah, I wish.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And what kind of guitar is it? A Gibson Les Paul?
It's yes, and I wear it proudly, even on the tattoo on my arm.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. When I was little, I picked up a guitar and I picked it up the wrong way, or apparently the wrong way. And my dad said to me, well, maybe you're Jimi Hendrix in a reincarnation, because apparently he played it upside down.
It did.
But I'm ambidextrous, so I don't ever know which way is the right way. But yeah, I put it straight back down again. I was like, this is too hard. If it's upside down, then that means there's something wrong with me. But I still love music. But anyway, thank you so much, Dennis.